The forgotten road sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that looked like they were about to pour their soul onto the world below. It was one of those afternoons where the wind whispered stories that no one really listened to. A long, winding highway that led nowhere fast. A young woman named Emily sat in her broken-down car, her fingers trembling around the steering wheel. She had tried calling for help, but her phone had died hours ago, and no car had passed in what felt like forever. Emily was 25, alone, and far from home. She had left her small town that morning, thinking she could make it to Los Angeles in one day. She had dreams, big ones. Like millions of others who stared at bright screens and believed one lucky break could change everything, she was chasing auditions, jobs, and something that felt more like a reason to keep going. The car had started making strange sounds just past the last gas station, but she ignored it. She had always ignored the warnings in life, from engines and people alike. Now she was stuck in the middle of nowhere, with the weight of her choices crashing down around her like the coming storm. She got out of the car and looked around. Nothing. Just the long stretch of highway behind and ahead. No buildings, no signs, just endless road and growing silence. The wind picked up, brushing against her face like a cold hand. Her stomach growled, and her throat was dry. She had half a bottle of water left and some crackers. She told herself she'd wait a little longer. Maybe someone would stop, but no. Hours passed. The sun dipped lower. The clouds thickened. She began walking, not because she had a plan, but because sitting still made her feel smaller. She walked with her arms crossed tightly across her chest, trying to stay warm, trying to stay brave, and then she saw a motorcycle at first. It was just a small hum in the distance, then louder, then closer. Her heart jumped. She waved her arms, shouted, and prayed the rider would notice her. The motorcycle slowed, then stopped a few feet in front of her. The man took off his helmet. It was Keanu Reeves. Emily stared in disbelief. Her mind scrambled for words, but nothing came out. It wasn't just that he was famous, it was the way. He looked at her not like a celebrity looking down, but like a human seeing another human in trouble. He walked toward her with calm steps. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft, gentle, real. Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't mean to cry, but it came out like a wave. "My car broke down," she whispered. "I've been here for hours. My phone's dead. I don't know what to do." Keanu didn't hesitate. He looked down the road, then back at her. "Where's your car?" she pointed. He followed her back to the broken vehicle, asked her a few questions, then checked under the hood. It was clear he didn't just act in movies. He knew his way around real-life problems, too. "Looks like your battery's completely drained," he said. "And your alternator's not helping." Emily nodded, wiping her face. "I don't have anyone to call." Keanu paused for a moment, then said, "Let's get you some help." She expected him to offer his phone, or maybe point her to a mechanic. Instead, he opened one of the small compartments on his motorcycle and pulled out a folded jacket. "Put this on," he said. "You're freezing." She hesitated. "Please," he added. She took it. Then he said something even more unexpected. "I'll take you to a safe spot. I know a friend nearby." She blinked. "You don't have to. You don't even know me." He smiled. "Maybe not. But no one should be left stranded." As she climbed onto the back of his bike, holding tightly to a man she never thought she'd meet, she felt something she hadn't felt in days. Safety. Not because he was famous, but because he cared. Because he stopped when no one else did. Rode through the cold wind and the empty road. Not much was said. Sometimes silence is kinder than words. When they arrived at a small rest stop with a diner and some lights glowing warmly against the night, Keanu parked the bike and led her inside. He ordered her soup and coffee, sat beside her, didn't ask for anything. He didn't take selfies. He didn't brag. He didn't post about it later. He just sat there like he had nowhere else to be, but right there, making sure she was okay. And in that quiet booth, Emily began to cry again, but not because she was scared this time, because kindness, real kindness, is rare. And she had forgotten what it felt like. Keanu handed her a napkin, and said gently, "You don't have to say anything.
Ow.
Just breathe. It's okay." And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. He helped her find a tow service and made. Sure, the diner staff kept an eye on her until the truck arrived. He even slipped a small card into her bag before leaving. It just had his initials and a number. He nodded once before walking out. No big goodbye. No dramatic exit. Just a man who helped and asked for nothing back. The number on the card diner was quiet after he left. Emily sat there for a while, holding the coffee cup between her hands like it was the only warm thing left in the world. The soup bowl was empty now. Her phone had started to charge at a wall socket near the booth. But she didn't check messages. She didn't scroll. Just stared at the small card in her lap. It was plain white. No logo. No title. Just 2 simple letters and a phone number below them, K.R. She didn't know what to do with it. Call him. Text. Say thank you. What would someone like him expect? But then she remembered he didn't expect anything. He never did. About him, even in that short hour, told her that he lived by a different code. The tow truck arrived 30 minutes later. The man was older, kind, and didn't ask too many questions. Emily explained her situation. He nodded and hooked up the car without judgment. "You're lucky someone found you," he said as he worked. Double quotes. "Yeah," she replied quietly. "I know." As the car was towed into the city, Emily sat in the passenger seat of the truck watching. The lights passed by. The driver had music on low, some classic rock that filled the silence without overwhelming it. She held the card again, running her thumb across the letters. By the time they reached the shop, it was already dark. The mechanic was closing up, but agreed to take the car in the morning. She didn't have enough cash to cover everything, but he let her leave it anyway. She thanked him and promised to return. She was honest like that. Always had been. Her next problem was where to sleep. She had booked a cheap motel earlier in the day, but hadn't made it there. And now, even if she went back, she couldn't afford both the repair and the room. She stepped outside the shop, looked around, and felt the weight of the world pressing back on her again. Her phone buzzed with a message from her sister. It was something about their dad, about his treatment. Emily didn't open it. She couldn't. Not yet. She sat on a bench outside the shop, jacket pulled tight, wondering what to do. Should she call a friend? Should she sleep on the bench? It wasn't safe. It wasn't smart. And then she looked at the card again. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she typed in the number. For a moment, she thought about deleting it, but instead she pressed send. "Hi, it's Emily. I just wanted to say thank you." She didn't expect a reply. Maybe he was already gone, already back in his world of scripts and cameras and people. It's always watching. But the phone buzzed 2 minutes later. "You're welcome. Are you somewhere safe?" Her chest tightened. She replied, "Trying. To figure that out, can't afford the room I booked. Long day. I'll figure it out. Promise." Another buzz. "Don't worry. Stay there. I'll send someone to help." She stared at the message, stunned. She started typing, something about how he didn't have to do that, but another message came in before she. "Hit send. I want to, and not because of who I am, because you matter too." Tears blurred her vision. 15 minutes later, a small black car pulled up near the curb. The driver stepped out, held up a sign with her name. He smiled kindly and helped her with her bag. "Mr. Reeves asked us to make sure you're okay," he said gently. They drove through the quiet streets to a clean, modest hotel. Not fancy, not flashy, just warm lights and soft beds and a place to breathe. The staff already had her name. "You're all set," they said at the desk. "Do I owe anything?" she asked. The woman shook her head with a smile. "It's taken care of." The room was simple. Soft sheets, clean bathroom, bottled water on the table. Emily sat on the edge of the bed and felt the exhaustion of the day settle into her bones. But instead of breaking her, it made her pause. Kindness. Real kindness. It hits different when you least expect it. She texted again. "I don't know how to thank you, really. You already did," came the reply. "You stayed strong." That's all she stared. At that message for a long time before turning off the phone. She didn't need the noise of the world right now. She just needed sleep. And for the first time in weeks, she slept deeply. The next morning, Emily woke up before sunrise. Light crept through the curtains slowly, like the day didn't want to wake her just yet. She stretched, showered, and stepped outside with her phone in her pocket and the jacket still around her shoulders. She didn't know what to do next, but then she got a message. Breakfast. She smiled. Yes, he didn't send an address, just a pin. Drop. It was a quiet cafe on a quiet street. When she arrived, he was already there. He sat at a corner table with a coffee and a newspaper. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. Not a celebrity smile, not a forced one, just real. Morning, he said. Morning, she replied. They talked. Not about fame or movies, not about who he was or what she wanted. They talked about books, about small towns, about how the world sometimes gets too loud to hear your own voice. He listened when she told him about her father, about her dreams, about the fear that maybe she had made the wrong choices. He didn't give advice. He just listened. And sometimes that's more powerful than any advice. After breakfast, he stood and handed her something small. It was a folded note. Don't read it now, he said. Read it when you need it. Then he walked her outside. Before they parted, he said one more thing. You're not invisible. I hope you remember that. With that, he was gone again. Not into a car with tinted windows, not surrounded by security, just a man on foot. Blending back into the city, Emily stood there for a long time, the note in her pocket, the moment sitting gently in her heart, and she knew something had shifted. Not because he saved her, but because he saw her. The letter in her pocket, Emily didn't open the note right away. It stayed in her pocket like a quiet secret. All day as she walked through the city, taking in the early sunlight, the smell of bread from corner bakeries, and the soft hum of a new beginning, she felt the folded paper resting against her side. Every now and then, she'd touch it gently, just to remind herself it was still there. She didn't want to rush it. Some things deserve silence before the opening. She stopped by the auto shop first. The mechanic greeted her with a warm smile, already at work under the hood of someone else's car. Her own car was parked at the far end of the lot, the hood closed now, the engine quiet. It's ready, the man said. Wasn't as bad as it looked. Your battery was done for, and the alternator needed fixing. She's old, but she... Run, Emily hesitated. I'm still trying to figure out payment. I need, he raised a hand. Already taken care of. Her stomach dropped. Guy came by early this morning, the mechanic said. Quiet fellow. Told me to make sure you were safe on the road. Didn't even give his name, but I recognized him. Emily blinked. He didn't have to. He wanted to. She didn't argue. Her voice wouldn't come out anyway. She stood there, unsure what to feel. Grateful, yes. But something else too. Something deeper, like being seen, had awakened. Something in her chest that had been asleep for too long. After signing the papers, she stepped back into her car. It smelled faintly of engine oil and rain. She placed her hands on the wheel and just sat there. She didn't start it. Instead, she pulled out the note. The paper was smooth. The handwriting was simple, not rushed, not messy, just honest. Dear Emily, this world can be heavy. You already know that. But sometimes the weight teaches us how strong we really are. Don't stop believing in yourself. Even when others don't see you, you're still there. Still fighting, still breathing. That matters. And even when it feels like you're alone, I promise someone out there cares. It's maybe someone you haven't even met yet. Stay kind, stay curious, stay brave. K.R. She read it twice, then again, and again, and then she cried. Not the broken kind of crying, not the kind that comes from pain. This was the kind that came when your heart finally lets go of the fear it's been gripping for too long. It was a release, a letting go. She drove aimlessly. For a while, no destination, just motion. The streets blurred past. People walked with purpose. Cars honked. The world moved like it always did, but for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was part of it, not behind a screen, not watching from a distance, but living in it. She stopped at a bookstore around noon. It was a small, quiet place tucked between a laundromat and an old cafe, the kind of shop that smelled like dust and dreams. She wandered the aisles, touched the spines of forgotten novels, and remembered how much she used to love stories. A boy working the counter asked if she needed help. She shook her head, just looking. He smiled and went back to reading. Emily found a book of poetry. She didn't know why she picked it up, because it felt honest. Maybe because her heart needed softer words. She bought it. $10. It left her with barely anything in her wallet, but she didn't regret it. Outside the shop, she sat on a bench and read. One page, then another. There was a line that hit her. Sometimes we are saved not by heroes, but by kindness unnoticed. Closed the book, and then her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, answered, double quotes, "Hi," came a familiar voice. "It's Keanu."
Hi.
She felt her breath catch. "Hi," she said softly. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Not at all." "I was wondering," he said, "if you'd join me somewhere? I'd like to introduce you to someone." Her fingers tightened around the phone. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," he said. "But I think you might be the right person to hear a story, and maybe they need someone who'll truly listen." Her heart skipped. "Okay," she replied. "Where?" He sent her an address. A small rehabilitation center tucked in a quiet part of town. He met her outside, dressed in a simple shirt and jeans. No cameras, no fans. Just him. "Thank you for coming," he said. She followed him inside. The place smelled of lavender and antiseptic. Soft music played in the background. People moved slowly, some with canes, some in wheelchairs. There was a peacefulness here, but also a sadness. Like each person carried years that no one had asked about. He led her to a room where an elderly woman sat by the window. Her eyes were dim, but her smile was kind. "This is Ruth," Keanu said gently. Emily smiled. "Hi, Ruth." "Hello, dear," Ruth said, her voice light, trembling. Keanu pulled up a chair. "Ruth was my neighbor when I was a teenager. She used to make cookies and leave them by my door when my mom worked late." Ruth chuckled. "He was a sweet boy, always reading those old books." Keanu looked at Emily. "She doesn't have family nearby, hasn't had many visitors. I thought maybe you could sit with her for a while, talk to her, hear her story." Emily nodded. Of course, and so she did. She sat with Ruth for hours. They talked about the war, about love, about the child Ruth lost, about the songs she used to sing when no one was listening, and Emily didn't interrupt, didn't check her phone, didn't pretend to care. She listened, really listened, and Ruth smiled like she hadn't in months. When Emily finally stood to leave, Ruth reached out and held her hand. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered. "Most people don't." Outside, Keanu waited on a bench. Emily sat beside him. "You have a gift," he said quietly. "I don't know," she replied. "You do," he insisted. "You made her feel seen. That matters." She looked at him, eyes soft. "You saw me too. Only because you refused to disappear." He sat in silence after that, and sometimes that's more powerful than words. When the light returned, sun was low, resting against the city skyline like it had finally earned a moment to breathe. Golden light spilled across the streets as if trying to soften the sharp edges of the world. Emily stood at the corner outside the rehab center, watching the light turn everything gold, even the smallest cracks in the sidewalk. For a moment, it all felt still. Keanu stood beside her, quiet as always. Neither spoke, but the silence between them wasn't awkward. It felt full, like a moment that didn't need explanation. She glanced at him, ready to say something, maybe. "Thank you." Maybe nothing at all. But he was already watching the horizon. Hands in his jacket pockets, eyes filled with thought. "Can I ask you something?" she finally said. He nodded slowly. "Of course, why me?" Her voice cracked just a little. "Could have kept driving that day. Could have helped and left it at that. But you didn't. You've stayed." Keanu looked down, then back up at her. "Because sometimes he said quietly. People show up in our lives and remind us of something we forgot. She waited. You reminded me of my sister. His voice was softer now, fragile, like it was walking on something sacred. She was strong, hopeful, always believed people could be better. She never gave up, even when everything tried to make her. Emily swallowed. What happened? She asked gently. She passed, he said. A long time ago. The silence that followed was heavier now, filled with the weight of things never said. I'm sorry, she whispered. Thank you, he replied. She looked down at the sidewalk, tracing the cracks. I'm not her, she said, unsure why she felt the need to say it. I know, he said. Don't, but you carry the same light. Emily didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't. And that was okay too. They walked for a while, down quiet streets that hummed with evening life cars passing, people laughing in restaurants, kids chasing each other on bikes. City had its rhythm, and for the first time, Emily felt like she wasn't walking against it. They ended up at a park with old benches and a small playground. Keanu sat on the edge of a wooden bench, motioned for her to join him. You know what I think we forget sometimes? He asked. What's that? Being kind isn't small? It's everything. She nodded slowly. I didn't think anyone would stop that day, but you still hoped? I guess I did. Hope is stubborn, he said. Doesn't let go, even when everything else does. A child nearby dropped a toy and burst into tears. His mother picked it up, handed it back gently, and wiped his face with her sleeve. He stopped crying almost immediately. See that? Keanu said softly. One simple act, and everything changes. Emily looked at him. Do you ever get tired of being the good guy? He chuckled. I'm not always the good guy. I just try not to be the bad one. She laughed too, the kind of laugh that comes from relief. I'm leaving tomorrow, she said suddenly. Going back home. He didn't flinch. How do you feel about that? Scared, she admitted, but stronger too. Like maybe I can try again, not in Hollywood, just in life. Not. He nodded slowly. Home doesn't mean giving up, he said. Sometimes it's where we find our voice again. Emily looked down at her hands. They weren't shaking anymore. Her nails were chipped, her fingers were dry. They were steady. Her hands had held fear, doubt, pain, and now they were learning to hold peace. I want to do something with what happened, she said. I want to give back somehow. Keanu smiled. Then start with one person. Like Ruth. Exactly like Ruth. And then what? Then find another. And another. Emily looked out over the park, the laughter of children, the hum of streetlights coming to life. And she felt something settle in her chest, something steady. Do you think people really change? She asked. I think people remember who they were, he said. And that's what changes them. They sat there until the sky turned dark and the stars blinked awake. Emily stood slowly, brushing her hands against her jeans. Thank you, she said. For everything. You're welcome, he said. Will I ever see you again? Maybe, he said. Maybe not. Even through the sadness in her eyes. Either way, she said, you'll always be part of my story. Keanu looked at her with a warmth that didn't need words. And you'll be part of mine, he said. They hugged, brief but deep. The kind that carries more than just goodbye. The kind that holds meaning. And then she walked away. No fanfare. No photos. Just a girl who had been stranded, who had been seen, and who now knew she had something to give. Later that night, back in her hotel room, Melly took out her notebook, the one she always carried but never used. Then she wrote the first words of a new story. Not about Hollywood. Not about being famous. But about kindness. About a broken-down car, a stranger on a motorcycle, and the day everything changed. The story she chose to tell, bus ride home, was long. Not because of the miles, but because of everything Emily carried with her now. The window beside her was cool against her head as she watched the towns roll by like chapters in a book she was no longer afraid to read. She held the notebook in her lap, her pen tucked behind her ear. She had already filled the first few pages with words, real ones, not polished or perfect, but true. She didn't care about structure or style. She only cared that the story was hers. In the seat in front of her, an older woman was knitting. Something soft and purple. Across the aisle, a man was softly snoring, head against the window. Life kept moving, quiet and steady. Emily thought about that last hug with Keanu. She hadn't told him everything she felt. She hadn't needed to. Some moments are too full for words, and some people understand without them. She opened her notebook and wrote, "He didn't save me. Reminded me that I was worth saving." Her phone buzzed in her pocket.
Yes.
She checked it, a message from her sister. "Dad's chemo went better this week. He's asking when you're coming home. We miss you." Tears welled in her eyes again, but not from pain. But they're from love. From something she thought she had lost when she stepped off the bus. Her sister was already waiting at the station, wrapped in a scarf, smiling even through tired eyes. They hugged tightly, not caring about who was watching. "You look different," her sister said softly. "I feel different," Emily replied. They drove home in silence, the kind of silence that was full of comfort. Her father was resting in the living room, thin now, pale, but his eyes still held fire. When he saw her, he grinned. "There she is," he whispered. "My brave girl." She knelt beside him, took his hand in hers. "I have a lot to tell you," she said. "I'm listening," he whispered, and he did. For the next 2 hours he listened. So did her sister. Emily told them everything, not just about the breakdown or the ride or the hotel. She told them about Ruth, about the bench in the park, about the moment she remembered who she was. And she told them about the note, the words that had kept her grounded. "You matter too," her father smiled. "I knew that." To remember, over the next few weeks, Emily stayed busy. She helped with her father's care. She cooked. She read out loud to him on the porch when the weather was warm. She kept writing. The story that started with a stranger's kindness was becoming something more. A friend of her sister's worked at a small community center downtown. They needed volunteers, people who could talk to seniors, run simple activities, just be present. Emily signed up the same day. Her first afternoon, she met a woman named Clara, 82, sharp-witted, full of stories no one had asked to hear in years. They sat together for hours. "I used to be a writer too," Clara said, eyes twinkling. "But then life got busy." Emily smiled. Life always does. Clara looked at her closely. "But you're still writing." "I'm trying," Emily said. One story at a time. After that, Emily came back every week. Not because she had to, but because something in her felt whole there. She brought her notebook. Sometimes she let the residents read what she wrote. Sometimes she just listened to their stories and jotted them down when she got home. Her heart was fuller than it had been in years one day. Her sister came home holding a small envelope. "This came for you," she said. Emily opened it. Inside was a letter. "Dear Emily, I hope this finds you well. Ruth passed away last week, peacefully, surrounded by nurses and music and the scent of lilacs. Before she left, she asked me to give you something. She said you reminded her of the girl she used to be. She wanted to say thank you. There's a book enclosed. She wrote it a long time ago, but never had the courage to publish. Maybe you'll find a piece of yourself in it. Maybe you'll help it find the world. Thank you for giving her joy in her final days." Keen tears slid down Emily's cheeks as she turned. The pages of Ruth's old manuscript. It was handwritten, fragile, filled with emotion and depth. She spent the next few weeks typing every word into her laptop, not changing anything, just bringing Ruth's voice back to life. When she finished, she sent a message. "I typed Ruth's book. It's beautiful. I want the world to read it," Keanu replied. "Within the hour, so do I. Let me make a few calls." A month later, a small indie publisher agreed to print the book. Ruth's name would finally be on shelves. Emily held the first printed copy in her hands like it was a treasure. She wrote the foreword herself. "This story belongs to Ruth." But it was saved by kindness. That kindness came on a quiet road when I had nothing left to give. Keanu sent one more message after the book was released. "You didn't just get found. Emily, you became the one who finds." She stared at that message for a long time. Then she wrote back, "Thank you for stopping that day. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the reason someone else keeps going." He replied simply, "You already are." The girl who paid it forward. Weather was warm that morning. Sunlight slipped through the kitchen window, painting golden streaks across the worn wooden table where Emily sat. A steaming mug of tea sat beside her, untouched, as she read through the final emails from the publisher. Ruth's book, A Garden Between Wars, had quietly become a favorite in local book clubs. Some larger blogs had picked it up. People were posting quotes from it online. One quote kept appearing everywhere: "We are all strangers until kindness makes us stay." Emily smiled each time she saw it. There was a knock at the door. She opened it to find a young girl, maybe 19, standing nervously with a flyer in her hand. "Hi," the girl said. "Sorry to bother you. Heard you help with community writing workshops? My English teacher said you might be someone who listens." Emily stepped aside and welcomed her in without a second thought. "You came to the right place," she said. The girl's name was Jasmine. She had grown up in a tough part of town, no father. A mother working double shifts. She didn't think her voice mattered. Until now, Emily made her tea. They sat together at the table. Jasmine unfolded the flyer and a few pages of her writing, hands shaking. "I don't know if it's good," she whispered. "I just want to try." Emily took the pages gently. "You don't have to be good to be heard. You just have to be brave enough to speak." They spent hours together. Jasmine read out loud for the first time in her life. She cried halfway through, but kept going. And when she finished, Emily clapped softly. "Your story matters," she said. "Don't stop writing it." Jasmine smiled for the first time that day. After she left, Emily sat back down and looked at the calendar pinned to her wall. A red circle marked the date for the first public reading of Ruth's book. The community center had planned it. People were coming: local journalists, families, strangers. Everyone who had been touched by Ruth's story. Keanu had sent a simple message that morning, one single quotes to make it in person. "Filming out of the country, but I'll be watching online." "Tell Ruth's story well," Emily replied. "I'll tell yours too." That night, the room at the community center filled slowly. Folding chairs were set in rows. Soft lights overhead. A table with stacks of Ruth's book. Jasmine came, holding her own printed poem in her trembling hands. Clara was there too, now in a wheelchair, but still sharp as ever. Holding Emily's hand tightly. "You've become one of us," Clara whispered. "A keeper of stories." Emily stepped onto the small stage. No microphone, no spotlight. Just her voice, a stack of pages, and a story that refused to be forgotten. "This is for Ruth," she began, "and for anyone who has ever felt invisible. This is for the strangers who stopped when no one else would. This is for the people who remind us that even on the worst days, kindness still matters." She told everything. From the highway to the cafe. From the rehab center to the porch with her father. She told them about the jacket. The note, the silence that saved her when words couldn't. She didn't mention his name, not because she was hiding it, but because the story wasn't about a celebrity. It was about a man who saw someone who had been forgotten and chose to stay. When she finished, there were tears. Not just in the crowd, but on her cheeks too. After the reading, people lined up to speak to her, to thank her, to tell her about the moments they had almost given up, and the strangers who helped them hold on. Jasmine stood at the back of the room, holding a piece of paper. "I want to read next time," she said shyly. "You will," Emily promised. That night, as she walked home under a quiet sky, Emily thought about the way her life had unfolded, not in the way she had planned. Not in flashing lights or movie sets, but in slow, steady kindness, in the space between strangers. When she reached her house, there was an envelope on the front step. No name, it's just her address. Handwritten inside was a small, black and white photo. Emily and Ruth sitting by the window, laughing. She didn't know who had taken it. Behind the photo was a single line: "You became the person someone else was praying for." Below it, small, neat handwriting she recognized instantly: :K.R. She held the photo to her chest and closed her eyes. She no longer felt lost. She no longer felt small. She no longer felt invisible. Because one day someone had stopped on a quiet road and asked for nothing in return, and she had spent every day since passing it on.